Thanks so much, everyone, for watching. We've got an epic lineup tonight of speakers. We've got an awesome panel here. Amazing group of functional doctors, technology, activists, for a leap forward in medicine.
You know, our goal is to make it easy for practitioners to learn in community.
This ecosystem that is being set up by the meetup groups, we believe will be the future ecosystem of this evolved primary care network, and it all revolves around you.
Welcome to the Functional Forum. Thanks for joining us in the charge to accelerate the evolution of medicine. Please welcome your host, James Maskell.
Hello and welcome to the Functional Forum. This month we are going to be talking about community resilience, and we've come here to Adventist Health headquarters in Roseville, California, where we'll be hosting the event from. The cross-section of functional medicine and community is where we think the future of community resilience will be going, and we're going to be listening to an interesting group of leaders from across the spectrum. It's going to be a great episode. Enjoy. We are here on location in Roseville, California at the global headquarters of Adventist Health, and we're really excited to be here with Dr. Egler. Doc, for those people in the functional medicine community who don't know that much about Adventist and how you got here, you want to share a little bit of the story?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a family medicine doctor by background. Came to functional medicine. I was working at USC as a faculty member, teaching doctors to be doctors, and I had discovered functional medicine. I went on to help Robin Berzin with building Partially Health LA. That's where I met you. And then from that, after 2 years there, sort of learning the ropes in the business of functional medicine, I was recruited by Adventist Health to help them create their vision here, which is basically we're at the corporate headquarters. They were building a new facility and they wanted to create a flagship clinic, but they did it in an integrated fashion that really fit their bigger vision for what they wanted healthcare to be.
So what does Adventist Health want healthcare to be?
So Adventist Health recognized that they had gotten away from their roots. Basically founded in 1863 by a number of people, but particularly James and Ellen White as some leaders. Ellen White wrote prolifically about health and wellness as part of religion and spirituality, and focused on whole person health. And so Adventist Health recognized that they, like many large integrated healthcare systems, have sort of gone off the rails of that and focusing, as you always speak of, on acute care, not really managing chronic care, or if you're managing chronic care, really not focusing on wellness or prevention, right? And so they wanted to, they became aware of other models of care, personalized medicine, integrated health, and particularly functional medicine. So I was recruited to lead the Inspire Health Center here in an integrated model of human performance, to create a flagship, which would then be hopefully the model for what they would like to do throughout their entire system.
So, Doc, this is a pretty impressive building here. I know it's new as well. What are some of the features of Adventist Corporate Health Quarters that you think are aligned with the vision of healthcare they're trying to create?
Sure. So this is a brand new building. We just moved into it just a little over a year ago. Everything was designed very intentionally, from the Inspire Health Center sort of being on the ground floor, down the hall from the Vitalized Cafe, which, as you can see, this is Ellen White, who's one of the founders of the Adventist, Seventh Day Adventist religion. Teach people that it is better to know how to keep well than to cure disease. There's a lot of things in this building that I think are great. There's complete conference room upstairs that is just treadmills all around. The focus rooms, it's all open space, but there are focus rooms where people can go to have some privacy or to have some quiet time, and almost all of them, there's some sort of exercise tool for them to utilize. These walls go up, and there's 3 conference rooms deep. So eventually we'll be able to have workshops, conferences here to teach people the model that we're working on. It's fantastic that people have the opportunity to get completely organic, healthy, vegan or vegetarian food that we have for them here in the building that we talk about in our center. We can actually prescribe diets for people, then they can just come right down the hall here. We're working on being able to provide people with take-home meals as well. And then the building is created and designed to have great airflow, freshness, the purity of the water, tons of light and windows. So it's really designed with whole wellness and well-being and wholeness in mind.
Beautiful. You were involved with creating the Inspire Health Center, which is in the center. What are some things that you're doing there that are unique for a corporate headquarters?
Sure. So we built an interdisciplinary based team. So we have a functional medicine, family medicine doctor, a functional nurse practitioner. We have a registered dietitian who's also a functional nutritionist. We have a massage therapist. We're looking to expand to acupuncture and chiropractic. I was just really excited to hire a physical therapist. We have a motion lab that uses Cerner technology. So we're partnered with either the second or first, depending on how you look at it, largest EMR system in the world. Second in the country, first in the world. And they created a motion lab. So motion sensors all around. You put people through functional movement exercises, and you can actually better diagnose issues that they have, from shoulder injuries to knee injuries to posture or ergonomic injuries, and actually have preventive prescriptions for motion plans that can basically reduce costs and morbidity by a tremendous amount. I'm more excited about our physical therapist doing exercise prescription programs for almost everybody, just like I'm excited about our nutritionist working with almost everybody, than I am them actually focusing on injuries. Again, that preventive focus.
Yeah. What is the scope of the entire system of Adventist right now?
Yeah, sure. So Adventist Health currently is in 4 states: West Coast, California, Oregon, Washington, and Hawaii. We are currently 37,000 people, including employees, providers, volunteers. There's, last count, 21 hospitals. It might be plus or minus 1 at this point. 295 clinics, multi-specialty, primary care, rural health clinics throughout the system. Adventist Health has, if not the largest, one of the largest rural health community clinic systems in the entire country. And I think maybe perhaps one of the most impressive statistics is that Adventist Health System takes care of 1,000 patients per hour per day.
Wow.
So it's pretty big.
So, the Seventh Day Adventists obviously is the one blue zone that's here in America.
Yeah.
How does that culture affect the healthcare now and sort of in their vision?
Well, funny that you should ask. So when I first was being recruited to Adventist Health, I was very aware of the blue zones. And I thought it was interesting that Loma Linda in the Adventist Health religion is really the only non-geographic ethnic blue zone, right? It's a religion-based blue zone. And I thought, I wonder if we can create blue zones. And I know that you've dealt with that in the past as well. And so I really looked at this opportunity to function on this corporate campus as an opportunity to create a blue zone here. And I didn't really think about it as blue zones. Being aware of Loma Linda University, Loma Linda University Medical Center, I was aware of that sort of merging of blue zone and Loma Linda culture.
Yeah.
But we didn't really talk about blue zones here. But fast forward, not even a year later, Adventist Health has really started to demonstrate that they're putting their money where their mouth is in terms of the vision that they had lured me here with, which is their mission is to live God's love by inspiring health, wholeness, and hope. And beginning of this year, they recently announced that they acquired Blue Zones as part of that vision.
Amazing. So the Blue Zones organization that is sort of helping to facilitate community transformation, I guess, is what I've seen from them.
Right. So Blue Zones has basically developed from distilling all the things that we learned that the people in Blue Zones do to live longer, not just lifespans, but health spans. It's distilled those down into certain principles they call the Power 9. They talk about the life radius, the 20 miles around your home. That's super important to your determining your health. And they have created a business that basically partners with people, places, and policies to help people nudge them in the right direction. Making their goal, their mission is to help people making the healthy choice easier. And so it's a natural symbiotic relationship acquiring them. One of the great things about acquiring Blue Zones is that Adventist Health, the healthcare organization, basically in that merger goes overnight from being a West Coast, fairly respectably large integrated healthcare system to now a national, if not international organization.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you're in charge of the sort of the care delivery, piece of it. Obviously, we've tried to make the point over the years that functional medicine and Blue Zones goes quite well together. What's been the sort of reaction to functional medicine in your first year working here? And I guess someone somewhere must have realized that they go well together to recruit you here.
Sure. This is actually our being here in this brand new building, this brand new program, with the vision of this being the model for where Adventist Health wants to go in the future, is really the culmination of probably almost a decade of planning and working with consultants to really build this model. And through that, they became a functional medicine as a model of amongst a number of other integrative health models. The interesting thing about working here, and I think the interesting thing of spreading this through the community of Adventist Health and beyond, is that unlike a lot of functional medicine providers that hang a shingle, we're not necessarily preaching to the choir, right? I would say that 85 to 90% of the population that I'm charged for caring for had no idea what functional medicine was, nor were they particularly interested in. They were sort of disenchanted or disenfranchised with the whole medical health community, or basically had come to accept it for what it is, right? And so I'm here to offer more, but people don't necessarily know what that is. And if anything, it might be working against me because they may not be completely pleased or really get as much as they want or need out of our current medical system. That's what they know and that's what they trust.
Yeah. So, when we first started speaking last year, you thought that, perhaps group visits might be a way to bring some of that energy into the organization. What's been the progress and how do you see it now in the context of this broader community resilience?
Sure. Well, I have to admit we're not as far along with group visits as we would like. But as far as incorporating it into our model, I'm really excited to get things started. I think that we would be a lot further along had COVID not sort of interrupted our plans. But the interesting thing about that too is that COVID has actually probably delayed us getting more deeply into utilizing group visits, but it's probably improved our process. Because what we have done is we've started to initiate webinars, which I think you can entice people into much more than sort of trying to sell them on this novel idea of, well, we're gonna put you in a group and we're gonna talk about our medical issues there, which, as you know, it's kind of one of the hurdles that you have to get over, right? Is that people, why would I do that when I can just go sit with a doctor individually? And of course, you've talked quite a bit about why group visits. But what we're doing right now is we're gonna be utilizing webinars to get larger populations to understand what we can then offer them, and then break those groups into group visits, which we can actually start to do now by webinar, or I should say virtual group visit, right? And then get people familiar with it. And what we are seeing in the ones that we've already launched, Cooking During Quarantine is the one we started off with, that these groups take off a life of their own, as you know.
Yeah, how do you find have you found any interesting ways to sort of overcome the barriers? I imagine cooking would have been quite synergistic given where
Yeah.
we're sitting right now with it is in the cafeteria, and the employees of Adventist corporate are used to eating good food.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people, when they start off with metabolic, I was very guilty of this. When you start off with doing group visits, I think, okay, what are the more traditional clusters I want to put people in? Metabolic syndrome, maybe even gut health or immune health, whatever. But that's not the way that people think, right? I think that we've been successful in enticing them into these communities a little bit more by sort of meeting people where they are. And certainly during COVID shelter at home, people were like, I don't really cook, but I can't get food elsewhere in the way that I typically do. So this is actually more appealing than it would typically be. So we had a Cooking with Quarantine webinar, and our functional nutritionist / registered dietitian created it in a fun way, right? Not very prescriptive, just sort of showing people that it could be easy, fun, delicious, and nutritious, right? And then sort of broke it into, this is how you can do a smoothie, this is how you can batch cook, and just broke it up into ways that people could really digest and really met them where they were at the time.
That's great. So you mentioned that that things had changed with COVID. What did you expect to be doing over the last few months, and then what have you actually been doing?
Yeah, so we were pretty much at the part. We had we had many conversations with you, as you know, as sort of like how to do group visits, and we had come to what we thought was going to be a model of doing that. And quite frankly, I'm kind of glad that we had that pause and a reframe, because I feel like we have a better understanding of how to engage people now and try to make it more fun, try to make it more relatable, rather than sort of a more sterile group visit. And I think that we're going to be much more successful on that. We've aligned things so that we can create not just individual group visits, because as you and I have started to talk about, I think group visits is great. We can talk about in a moment why it's such an essential key factor for us here in this model. But I think that group visits is sort of a microcosm of what I would like to do on a bigger scale. Basically creating these little group communities, but then can you then use that to then foster an even larger community? And that's sort of where Blue Zones comes in and wraps around this whole thing.
Yeah, well, that's one of the reasons why I was really excited to connect, is because this month we're talking about community resilience.
Mm-hmm.
And it does seem that like there's this sort of intersection between medical care and community health that hasn't really been bridged that well before, and the social determinants of health and those kind of things. And with the brand of Adventist, with where it came from, it does feel like there, maybe is an opportunity to sort of bridge those two worlds in a new way, especially with the purchase of the Blue Zone organization. So how do you see that coming together?
Well, one of the great things, there's many great things, but one of the additional great things about Adventist Health, in addition to them seeing and sort of buying into this vision as a large integrated healthcare system, is that they're also mission-based, right? It's a nonprofit organization, and it is a religious organization, although you really have to dive into it to have that feel. So we talk all the time about margin over mission versus mission over margin. And I really feel that this is a mission over margin company. Of course, we have to be sustainable, but Adventist Health longer or bigger goal is to connect with community and have an impact on all the determinants of health, not just what's traditionally determined by conventional medical system.
So from here, what would you say that you're most excited about for the potential of Adventist and your role here, and what you think you can get done in Adventist that maybe hasn't happened anywhere else in the world?
Sure. With everything that's going on, there's really been quite an evolution, or I should just say a unnatural progression in the less than a year that I've even been here. I was recruited and really bought into, I was charmed into this work by the vision that they referred to as human performance. And that was, on the ground level, that looks like a corporate headquarters or any community that has a medical center that is more functional, personalized, integrative health based, and that's the Inspire Health Center. But right down the hall is a Vitalized Cafe. So what you've probably experienced quite a bit is people go to see a functional medicine provider, and what do they learn? They learn that they have to address a lot of lifestyle issues, right? And some of the excuses that come up right away is that dietary changes, those nutritional changes, are really barriers. People may not be used to shopping, cooking, cleaning, and eating in the way that might be better for them, right? So we are able to say, well, to help you bridge this gap, right down the hall is the Vitalized Cafe. It's a completely vegetarian/vegan, organic cafeteria. We also have, as part of this model, human performance coaching. So imagine health coaching, but also business coaching, professional coaching, financial coaching, all rolled into one. And it's part of this program under the umbrella of helping people create better life-work integration.
Yeah.
Not life-work balance, because life-work balance is sort of what we've talked about for a long time, but that balance means this, right? It means this is going up, this is going down. Life-work integration, so that your life is just more whole all the way through.
How do you see the lessons that you're learning here in corporate headquarters? How do you see those rolling out to the hospitals and the clinics and all the employees across the states, and then eventually through the Blue Zone project too?
Sure, I had mentioned sort of an unnatural progression. What I meant by that was I was very excited about the idea, but what I really thought was myself and the team that I built here would really have to spend 3, maybe 5 years building the model, demonstrating that it has financial viability, that it's sustainable, that it may take that long to really see quality measures improve, right? But the momentum of the organization is such that, they're not even waiting for that, right? So the announcement of a 2030 strategy that actually creates a complete division that is not separate from, but it is its own entity from the traditional healthcare division. So focusing on wellness, the acquisition of Blue Zones. So what I see is taking this model at this center, and we have a number of opportunities. So it's like peeling an onion, right? You've got a functional medicine center where we're using integrated team-based care to provide a different model, everything sort of under one roof, right? Then you've got this human performance model that can kind of help to create a community of health in a very Blue Zone-esque fashion, at least in a corporate realm. Then we can start to partner with the community to kind of extend that Blue Zone's nature of it. There's being able to utilize tools like group visits, but then also expand that into the community level. And I think there's another opportunity for us to take corporate wellness, which has kind of become a big nothing burger, and redesign that as well. And then once you've created that model from the personal to the community to the corporate level, then you take that into each one of the branches of a integrated healthcare system, and then you can start teaching other healthcare systems how to do that.
Beautiful. Well, look, I just want to say how enthused I am by the project and excited that they have you here at the helm, and certainly throughout the functional forum between, the Blue Zone conversations that we had, the Journey to 100 that we did in Guernsey, and obviously it being functional medicine, I really feel like this intersection of functional medicine and community health is taking us where we really need to go. And I think that projects like Adventist Health and the Cleveland Clinic are some of the most exciting things that are happening in healthcare, because it's really merging those two areas. And I'm super excited to continue to follow. And the fact that it's just up the road from where I live means that we'll be able to follow it easily.
Well, you've been doing more than following. I've been very blessed with my position and the opportunities and the people that I have to work with here that have this greater vision of creating a well-being institute. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to be able to continue to brainstorm with you and integrate these things together as well.
Beautiful. So it's really exciting what's happening here with Adventist, with community resilience. But what can you do in your practice? Over the last couple of years, we've been really focused on group visits as a way to build community resilience. And last year, I had the opportunity to interview John Weeks, who is the editor-in-chief of the Journal of Alternative and Complementary Medicine, that did a whole series and a whole journal on the new science of group visits. It was a really interesting interview. Here are some of the best bits. All right, we are here at Integrated Medicine for the Underserved with none other than John Weeks. He has been chronicling the rise of the integrated medicine movement, the naturopathic movement, for decades. And we are super excited to be here because there's a strong convergence in our efforts, kind of yet again, John. So I'm really excited to share. So first and foremost, something that when I declared that 2019 was going to be the year of the groups on January 1, I did not know that there was going to be the first ever medical journal focused on groups. You're the editor-in-chief. Can you share a little bit about how it came about and what it's been like to go through this process?
I had a teacher in the late 90s who was a nurse working with Herbert Benson, who was working with programs that were called relaxation response, but they were finding out that this mindfulness work that included dietary changes, classic kind of multimodal stuff. Eileen Stewart Shore is her name. I just saw this alignment by values with what I liked in the naturopathic movement, like in the integrative health movement, the fundamental sort of reorientation of how health comes about, sort of the obvious value of group for delivering content around everything to do with lifestyle change, which is right at the heart of what we need to be doing around all chronic disease. But it was actually the literature that was sharing that adults would rather learn and learn better when they're interactive, when they, of course, themselves, by this, you get to a certain age and it's hard to keep your own mouth shut, and so the adults learn better when they're interactive, when they're sharing with each other, when they're learning from each other. And that's like the final piece to it, is like what's not aligned with this. And honestly, it's been a frustration of mine that these fields have not taken it up and realized that part of the transformation of medicine is actually a transformation out of this belief set that the best medicine goes from practitioner to patient, rather than in the era of chronic disease. For certain, it's got to go with the practitioner connecting with, working with groups of patients to help empower them so they can bring themselves around to health. So when 3 years ago I had the opportunity to become editor-in-chief of the journal, I was scoping for ideas, and actually through people at this conference here, I learned that Maria Chow and Paula Gardner were connected to each other in the work, and I thought, what a great team to have as special issue editors. And then they brought in Marina Burnett from the program in the country that has the most delivery of group services in mainstream healthcare in federally qualified health centers, which is the Centering Healthcare, Centering Parenting programs. Now they're expanding. So it's a great team. Two just top quality academics, grant funded through the NIH, through the Patient Centered Outcome Research Institute, looking at integrative group visits, and then together with Marina, who's bringing all that on the groundwork.
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the things I wanted to ask you about this journal, obviously there's a ton of great material in here. I've had a chance to read some of it online. You've obviously been sort of knee deep in this for a while. What were some things that surprised you that you learned along the way that you think most practitioners probably would have overlooked or hadn't thought about the benefits of group structures?
Well, there's a great commentary from Jeff Egler, who who's just talking about what is this sort of secret juice of, what is it that happens when a group's there? And, in my own mind, this wasn't new, but it goes back to something that's, from the era back in the day was, we were aware that we were breaking down the fabric of society, and a lot of the things that held us together, whether that be joining political parties or the strength of our neighborhoods back then. A lot of the churches, things that held us together, were breaking apart, and we were becoming more isolated. We were in existential crisis. And when I got involved with these fields, it always seemed that what we needed to be doing was knitting together. And what better way to knit together than to bring people into groups in the process, let the medium be the message, right? What was fascinating is that we got papers in and published papers in multiple environments. There are groups in primary care, groups in oncology, the use of groups to help with nurses, groups in pediatrics led by naturopathic doctors. Using groups in non-pharmacologic approaches to pain. Sitting with that whole set of papers and thinking about them is what stimulated my editorial which basically asks the question of if in a transformed medical industry to actually become a system of health creation, mightn't groups end up not being something we sort of bring in and add on, but something we start thinking about, maybe it needs to be much more in the center, and then we use the individual care as needed. But if really the biggest problems we have now from a cost perspective, from a pain perspective, health perspective, are these chronic conditions that are ultimately have a lot to do with people embracing behavioral determinants and finding their way through, groups ought to be in the center for it. And this was showing that there are ways to do that throughout all these different branches of medicine. I mean, the remarkable point is that, a lot of the nature of the group has to do with developing a new kind of competencies in the practitioner. So instead of being the person, the expert in control, right, and saying, oh, we have the answer to that, the best way to do a group is this, is that the best people running groups will say, the best thing to do is to gather the people, and then now we in this group, depending on how it's constituted, will find our way to the best use of the group. There's certainly very structured programs like the one you know of at Cleveland Clinic. That's got a very clear structure to how they proceed. That's having some very fine outcomes. And the fact that the early outcomes is that despite the fact that their regular functional medicine team care is showing to be more valuable than regular primary care, that they're seeing the early numbers are that people in their group program are actually finding their way to change more rapidly in group than the one-to-one. It's kind of an amazing thing. And it makes you think with all self-interest in norms aside, we would be going headlong into saying, my God, then consider the efficiencies. But the fact is, every type of provider, not just regular medical doctors and nurses, was taught to work in a one-on-one environment. They were probably partly attracted to the control of the one-on-one environment, having their little world in their office with their one other person there, where it's kind of their domain. This is a different game, right? This is a game where you're really seeking to kind of offload some of that. You're offloading the top-down leadership of the clinical engagement and trying to find really being a servant leader, right?
We were just in Dr. Geller's session, and I think we both realized that we were seeing some of that live. For people who weren't able to see that and understand that, maybe we can find a clip of it because we were recording it. What did you see in there that made you think that, okay, this is the skill set that's necessary for the transformation of medicine?
So first, to get, as we were just saying, Jeff's been at it for 20 years. In time, we will have scores of people who've been at it for 20 years. So I want us for a moment to just appreciate how much deeper our collective understanding of how best to answer your question of what's the best way to do it will be once we've moved along that far. I think that what struck me about Jeff was how he would do something with us, because while he was teaching us about groups, he was teaching us as a group, right? As he would do something, and then he would show the seam, right? He would show, what I was doing there was doing something.
Like the magician showing his tricks.
He was showing the tricks. He'd do the trick. The trick would already have been done to us. And then he said, you see what I was doing there? So he'd say, I'd say, have the short-haired people talk first, right, in your small group. And he said, when you're working with men as a minority, or you really want to get men to speak up, you don't want to say, hey, dude, speak up. You say, hey, let the short-haired people speak first, right? So it's these little, they're little tricks. More often than they're just these ways of, it really is it's a paradigm shift, right? It's what we've been talking about.
Yeah.
But it's deeper and more profound because it's a giving up. It's a giving up of control and authority.
The gap between conventional medicine and individually delivered integrated medicine, and the gap between individually integrated medicine and group visits, like the gap is different.
That
there,
is
right?
exactly. A parallel that's probably for the cutting room floor, but we lived in Central America for a while, and my son, who was 9 years old, when we were crossing over from Costa Rica, where we lived first, to Nicaragua, where we lived later, but we used to go up there to renew our visas. At one point, our son said, I think that going from Costa Rica to Nicaragua is a lot bigger deal than going from Seattle to Costa Rica. So in this setup, the integrative MDs or integrative practitioners, functional medicine docs, are sort of the Costa Rica.
Yeah.
In this environment, it's moving into this other terrain that really is the radical shift. And it's been my experience. I have directly promoted the idea to leaders of the academic integrative medicine world, the naturopathic world, the functional medicine world, said, you all, can put your name on something in healthcare by being known as the groups that really moved and adopted group services. That's where we're going. What's wrong with the logic in this? Show me why we should not be doing that.
Yeah.
There's not a good answer for it. I mean, you've learned this too.
No.
That really, it's
It's
so
the perfect
positive.
Trojan horse, honestly, because one of the things I think about is that, functional and integrated medicine lost its moral authority the moment that it was only for rich people.
Yeah, you're right.
And that the only way to get it back is to lead in showing how to deliver real care of any sort, but high quality care for the poorest people in the country, because they haven't worked it out. Conventional medicine hasn't really worked it out. If we could work it out, you can step back into that position of authority, which I think we need to be if we're going to take over.
That is, you put that strongly and beautifully. I totally support you and agree with you in it. It's a place to step up, but of course, it requires us to get over that sort of individual pleasure that an individual doc gets with all of their biomedical pathways, that they like to go into their expertise and sit down and then guide the patient through looking at their pathways. It's interesting. It's a great chess game, but whether it's the thing that the patient needs in order to affect change, that's another
Well,
question.
look, I think about it in terms of scale. I mean, I think those doctors could just stay where they are doing exactly what they are, but that's not the first port of call, right? You see from the Cleveland Clinic, you come through the 10-week group visit. Most people don't need anything after that because they're just better, but for the people afterwards, we can go to the deeper pathways.
Exactly.
I always think about the order of care, and one of the things that, I've become kind of obsessed with too, and I know that you've advocated for, since its beginning, is this naturopathic therapeutic order, right? And that concept. And when I was looking at the triangle the other day, I just really saw that the group visit is really, in the way that Jeff did it next door a minute ago, it's really the best way of determining what social determinants of health are missing and how to get them back. And that's the bottom of the pyramid.
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually, it's right there.
Yeah.
I totally agree. It's sometimes, it's the hardest to follow our own messages, and that is what the therapeutic order says. It's where we belong, where we need to be putting our attention. And again, it's the same structure that, there's the quality that any, medical doctor expert, surgeon expert, I mean, that I had the value of radiation oncologists. I wouldn't be sitting here today, right? Love the fact that they exist, but, they're not the people that are hanging out down there at the bottom of helping guide people find their way towards health. And, here's a point that's, I think, an interesting one as the field starts thinking more about this, as all of medicine does, is this something that we give to other practitioners, or is it something that physicians and the sort of more expensive, the higher social investment providers do? I happen to have a pretty strong bias that I think it's really a good message to patients when their physician says, no, I'm not putting you over there because, some financial decision. I'm putting you there, and I'm going there with you because this is where the work is. And I'm also going there with you because I actually like this. I like having a break from this sort of short visit thing where I don't have time to do much more than look at my computer screen and, take your blood, right? Or actually, you don't even do that anymore. Take blood pressure. So that's a question that a lot of people start thinking it's something that let's have people who are further down the order of costs, and I just think that downplays the importance and downplays the value to our providers of them still having a relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. So what role do you feel, having written this journal and put it together, do you think that group visits can play in sort of redistributing health equity?
So when we were putting the journal together, we often, in our special issues, we look for partner organizations who are invested in it. And we, Integrative Medicine with Underserved and Centering Healthcare Institute are the two. And both of them deliver short commentaries talking about why. And both of them, they separately wrote almost exactly the same commentary. They've just said that we are charged to serve everybody. We are charged to care about equity and to care about healthcare for all. And there is no way we're getting to healthcare for all if we don't elevate the value of group services. There's no way we're getting training in mindfulness, training in basic lifestyle, unless we get much, much better at not only delivering, but paying for, private insurers, government insurers, whatever. So it's just right at the heart of the mission.
The era of value-based care is coming, slower than we expect. Do you feel like that would change the game?
The group fits right in the heart of the best of value-based care, and the best of value-based care is the adoption of what Berwick calls salutogenesis, a phrase that he got from Wayne Jonas, which is it's health creation. And if you go to health creation and thinking about strategies, there's no way you're not going to be drawing on group in multiple ways.
We are super grateful to the Lifestyle Matrix Resource Center for sponsoring this episode of the Functional Forum. Since we decided to go hard on the group visit train, we wanted to have them because they create these group visit toolkits. And these are some of the patient education materials that go with them. There's cardiometabolic, there's GI, there's immune, there's musculoskeletal, and this one is for stress. So if you're interested in running group visits in your practice and you're looking to make it way easier to educate patients and have all your content ahead of time, go to goevomed.com/LMRC to find out more about the group visit toolkits. So next up, we are going to speak with Dr. Christopher Moat. He is a leading physician in functional medicine, but early this year, we did a special interview with him where he talked about one of his innovations, which is doing functional medicine lab reviews in a group. We think this could be a major step towards facilitating community resilience and understanding how functional medicine can merge with community. Enjoy. The first question I want to ask you is about the name of your practice, because kind of the reason why I knew, even before I knew that you would be good at doing the group visits, is I think you announce yourself to the community via your name. And I would just love for you to share a little bit about how you came up with that name and how you've positioned yourself in the market with regard to kind of what you do and what it feels like to be part of your clinic.
Yeah, thanks, James. And I appreciate the opportunity. So when I first started my career in medicine, I was a chiropractor. I settled into a small office. We set it up as a concierge practice. We made it really hospitable, and we spent a lot of time with our patients. But I very quickly realized that I was carrying the entire load to help these patients, to both encourage, to inform, to hold them accountable, to give them test results, to manage their plans, to take the call. It was just more work than one person could handle. And so it did limit my growth, maybe more than anything. I realized very quickly that someday I wanted an office where we shared the load and we'd have like-minded professionals who could all build into the patient, who could all have an area of expertise where they could encourage and inform and equip the patients. And so my vision was that we would actually have teaching spaces. And it was other patients who actually said, yeah, I think I'd come to that, but I'm a little leery about coming in when there's a whole bunch of other people. So we tried it once, way, way, way back. And everybody walked out of there saying, this is great. When can we do it again? So then 15 years later, I went through medical school. I went through residency. I worked in other doctors' offices. And finally, about 3.5 years ago, we got to bring our vision into reality. And so we called it Cornerstone Health Community, knowing that people are going to be like, is that a medical office? But now when they've come in and experienced it, it clicks and they become part of the tribe. And it really has been bigger than I thought it would be.
That's bang on. Yeah, I love it. I love the name of it. Obviously, the Cornerstone Health Community, and it's people helping each other get healthy. And I think that's really what the future of medicine looks like. So before we get into your virtual group visits, maybe just do a little moment here on like what the different ways you were doing groups pre-COVID and what that taught you about patient care.
Yeah, you bet. So the way I set it up initially was not because, again, there's always some resistance. The patients have never had anything like this. Their mindset is, I'm going to meet with my doctor, they're going to meet with me, and then I go home. And so you have to break them out of that shell. So we just tell patients from the very get-go that we do that here, and that when you're going to get a test result, say on hormones or digestion, you're going to come to a class where other people will get test results on hormones or digestion. And so the doctor will show up and review digestion or hormones, and you'll have your test results in front of you and a personalized treatment plan. And so we set this up to be topic driven: hormones, digestion, detoxification, circadian rhythms. And so that's something we announce as part of our initial visit or even in our orientation. And then the expectation is that's how you're going to get it. It's a more cost-effective approach. You'll spend less money. When we did it, we had to set up a meeting space. And so our meeting room, our waiting room, is the meeting space. And I like to have mine after hours. I know others prefer it to do during the day. It's your preference. Honestly, I will say, James, the biggest thing when I talk to other doctors that keeps them from doing this is not the logistics. It's between their ears. They just somehow get the idea that patients won't want it, that they're not going to like it, that it's going to be complicated, and it is anything but if we just put it out there. So I could give you the way we do it, but anybody else may structure it differently. Do you want me to give more details?
Or well, I'd love to just, I really appreciate you saying that. What, one of the things that, share what you did and what you're doing now.
Yeah, so Josiah, can I have the screen? Can you set me up as the... There you go. Okay. So this is not a lengthy slide presentation, but I'll show you just a couple of things that we've seen when we do this. So first of all, I just want you to know that the culture is out there, that CMS and insurance are both for this. This comes from the North Carolina Blue Cross Blue Shield website, and they actually talk about why it's so beneficial that group health visits are this therapeutic approach designed to enlist the patient to take control of their health. And then they talk about what are the guidelines. They're actually very simple. And what's not covered, if they're brand new to the practice, if the physician's not there in attendance, if you don't give it the time or the space or give them an opportunity for a one-on-one if it's requested. So this is actually a pretty low bar to meet, and insurance companies are for it. And then it's even easy because they'll let you code the same codes. I bill a 99213. There's not a magic group health visit code. It's just a simple office visit code. And to meet that, it takes minimal requirements for examination and taking vitals. So it's actually very simple. When we do it, we bring people in. We'll actually have them check into the office. They pay their copay or their office visit fee. They are given a bag with test results, treatment plan that I wrote just ahead of class time, and their supplements if there are some that are indicated based on the test. And then they pick a seat. We have a meeting space for 12 to 20 people. Usually we have 6 to 12 in there. And so they spread out at 6 o'clock in the evening. And then I have a big whiteboard, electronic whiteboard, and I'll show slides. So for example, on the hormone class, they'll sit down and I'll tell them that this is about the brain and not your adrenal glands, that you don't have adrenal fatigue, that it's your brain that's struggling. And we'll get right into it and just show some colorful, impactful slides. And then we ask them to pull out their test results. And I'll put up specimens or samples of those test results and say, listen, this is the number one reason why people can't go to sleep. If you look at your test results and you see your bedtime cortisol is elevated, you have this problem. And you can look at your treatment plan and we'll discuss the supplements that would correct this problem. So we'll actually get in on these and we'll show them how to interpret their test results. They have a written treatment plan with them. And then I just make sure that when they come into the room, that each of them is, we take 2 sets of vitals. We take a pulse oximeter and put it on their fingers so we can get their pulse and their oxygenation level. And then we have their height from a former visit. You only need 3 vitals to qualify for a 99213. I don't set aside a special area just to meet with all of them one-on-one, but I will tell them during the class that if they would like to stay, I will meet with them one-on-one at the end of the class. And then each person gets roughly 2 to 4 minutes, which is more than sufficient for most of them. And others have just had 90 minutes. They're like, I'm full. I want to go home. And so it actually is less cumbersome to administer than you might think. I keep just 1 staff person for the first 15 minutes for check-in, and then everybody goes home and it's just myself and 4 or 5 patients, maybe 8 or 10 at most.
Yeah, that's I'm really interested to see that. Let's just bring it out on the table, because like I have this conversation all the time. I put it in my book. Doc, what about privacy? What about Hippa? Like, how are you setting that up? Because you can't have one conversation with anyone about this without that coming out as the first thing.
No, I totally agree, but it's voluntary. And it says right here in this memo from Blue Cross Blue Shield, it's voluntary, it's interactive. It's not considered a class, it's actually considered care delivery. It's a system. And it's now widely recognized that you don't have to be hyper careful with privacy, because patients walk in there and know that others will be listening. So they don't share what's personal, and frequently they don't. You would be surprised though how many people do. And it's first name basis. What I don't do is put people's test results up on the screen. We don't do that. So we will have people hold their test result, and I put sample tests up there.
That's the key piece, I think, because when I've shared with people, hey, Dr. Moat's doing these things where he goes through like a lab review. They're like, well, you can't look at someone else's labs. And I was like, no, look, everyone looks at their own labs, and we go through a process of helping them understand, like, what does this part of the lab mean? What does that part of the lab mean? I know we're going to talk about different ways that you've done it, but can we talk about the lab review here for a minute? So
yes.
You're setting that up. What does the flow of a lab review thing look like, and how do you recruit people in?
Yeah, so this actually starts with the first time a patient comes to us. We recognize people need different touch points. So maybe they're on the IFM website, they heard about us, their first call to our office, maybe the second touch point. The third one is usually our orientation. This is where we tell them how we function as an office and our emphasis on tribe and group health visits. And we just set the expectation from the first time before they even become a patient that we do group health visits. And you'll get your lab results in 2 instances, hormones and digestion, at a group health visit. But these are test driven. So a patient comes in and they have their test results. Occasionally somebody will say, well, I really want to go over it with you one-on-one, Dr. Moat. We'll say, well, you can. I'm sorry. You can do that, but it's going to cost you more money. We would ask you just to come to the class and get your test results and then sit down, because we have 90 minutes worth of ideas that we need to transfer from our brain to your brain. You can't cram that in a 30 or 40 minute visit. And then they pay a 99213, which could be a $20 copay, or it could be $90 at a discounted rate, because their insurance will discount it. But my point is, they pay for a small office visit, but they get 90 minutes of life-changing information to go home and change habits, and a test result to boot. So, James, keep me focused. Was that the question I was supposed to address?
No, I think that's a clear starting point. It sounds like it sounds like early on in the process, you're helping people understand what it's going to be like to be part of your practice. And I'd love to get into that too, because I feel like this seems to be like a missing piece in almost every functional medicine clinic that I see, where there's sort of like an expectation mismatch, right? Where people have certain expectations of what it's going to be like, and then it's not like that. And they can come away maybe feeling like they weren't sure why this happened or that happened, but everything's happening so fast. You don't have time to tell everyone anything. Did I like tell that person this? Did I tell that person that? And what I see that you've done is to be able to create a really strong way of onboarding people into the practice, so there's no mismatch of expectations, right?
Yeah. Well, you hit it on the head. And this came out of necessity, because when we opened this dream practice, it wasn't such a dream at first, because my set of expectations for my patients was so different than what they came in the door with. I spent most of the first hour-long visit for a new patient just describing how we're going to work together. And we didn't leave enough time then to get down to business with everybody. And I wasn't about to set up a 2 and 4 hour intake appointment, because we take insurance in our office. You don't get paid by insurance for anything over 40 minutes, not routinely. So we had to have a way to set expectations. And so what we came up with was an orientation. And it's really very simple, because we tell patients that if you want to work with us on the primary care office, see the physician assistant, have an annual wellness visit, just come on in. We'll bill your insurance and you're out the door. But when you want functional medicine to transform your health, please, please come to the orientation. We said please at first. Now we don't see you if you don't come. It's free. And so we ask people to come in and sit down, and for 1 hour, I take them through the expectations for how we function in the office, that we will do functional medicine at the highest level, that we will do their primary care if they would like, and we will bill their insurance. And that does make us a unicorn. There's no doubt about it. Then we go through and we set expectations for how we're going to work together in groups. And that's where it all starts. At that point, then, this hour-long orientation does two things. It sets expectations, because anytime expectations and reality don't line up, there is ample room for disappointment. And that puts a heavy burden on the staff to go back and try to explain everything to patients. And it really does stress out the office and the patient. So we're there to set expectations. The other reason we're there is to gain agreement. The patient wants to walk through the door and realize that they like the way you talk, the way you look. They want to see you. They want to hear you. They want to know that your ideas agree with their ideas. And so this orientation is about encouraging their hope, gaining agreement that we are like-minded, and then setting expectations that we're going to do it differently, better. We're going to walk you through this process and hold your hand all the way through it. So it's been wonderfully helpful to set patients' expectations and to really get things started off on the right foot.
That's wonderful. So tell me about the transition from like in-person orientation to digital orientation. When do you do these orientations? What time of the week have you found that works well?
Yeah, so we offer them about 3 times a month. And we'll do it at noon, because we can keep that orientation to about an hour. And then we'll do it at 6 in the evening. And so we'll vary that up. We've always done it that way. And we've always done it in the office. But both our group visits and our orientations have had to go virtual, because there's just no way to bring them in the office and keep everybody safe being in proximity. The group health visits were pretty seamless, because again, I'm there, I'm teaching the class, and it was not difficult. I resisted telehealth for a long time, because I just didn't like the idea of not being face-to-face, but then it was thrust upon me and I realized this is not hard. In fact, I really like it. As you were saying earlier, James, patients will pick up their camera and walk outside and say, look at the garden I've built in the last 6 weeks. And they're so excited about it. And you know they've been outside getting some fresh air. So that's been easy. The orientation has been tougher, because I had the idea that I would set up a webinar and then I would just come in and answer the chat questions at the end. And that is my own inability to figure out the technology. So we're still just about a month in. We're still having me get on and I do actual live orientations as if they were here in the office. And we just open it up and do the chat feature on our Zoom calls. So and if I could get to the point where I could run a webinar and just show up at the end, that would make it simple. But I think we're going to all be back in the office before we figure out that side of the technology.
Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation on community resilience, and thanks to Adventist Health for hosting us here at their corporate headquarters. You can see that Adventist is really serious about merging the worlds of community health and functional medicine. And that is super, super exciting. A couple of years ago, when we made the trip to the Cleveland Clinic to see the Center for Functional Medicine there, we just knew that that was going to be something really substantial for the future of our movement, and it feels the same thing here. So next month, we'll be talking about practice resilience. Can't wait for you to join us. Until then, we'll see you next time.